Story 1. To take fiction a bit too seriously. Raider Harg burst into the hideaway cave in a blur of shoulder-slam rebounds, jagged pauldron metal scrapes, and more than a dozen curses at every little inconvenience. Laws of physics, mostly. It looked like he actually tried to tackle the oxygen scrubber with his arrival. Again. The way he bounced his head around inside of his scrap-shackled helmet cage, Irian could tell that Harg was in a great mood. That meant it was a bad day for somebody else. Such was the life of a Badlands raider prowling the contested territories of a planet a-swarm with Cold Wars, espionage, and sabotage. Being a freelance troublemaker amid this type of environment had its perks, such as constant opportunity and more than a little military-grade free shit, as Harg would say. The pair were a notorious team likened to the worst kind of war profiteer or gun runner, but only they kill those guys and steal the stuff for themselves during the transfers. They were a fantastically successful pair. Harg was the muscle and boundless drug-fueled cast tungsten will, Irian was the cyber-augmented brains. They worked well together, the cave crammed full of gear and supplies a firm proof of that. Who were the victims this time, Harg? And please stop abusing the oxygen scrubber. You will definitely regret it when it breaks down. That was code for, you seriously reek. Harg ignored the comment, zoning out whenever Dorkzilla started getting excited with one of his witty comments. He had been around the metagalactic web savant long enough now to know when he thinks he was about to zing a good one. His experience gave him enough early warning to disengage completely from the conversation in time. They were always lame. Oh, it was a blast, Irian. You should have seen those humans scatter and cower in their habdomes. Irian twitched and went silent for a moment. The sudden stillness got Harg's full attention. Humans? Irian asked, with poorly faked disinterest. They weren't factionalized. Just, let's see, yep, just a civilian prospector camp. The quiver in Irian's synth-modulated voice gave Harg terrible kidney tingles of fear. These were all signs that he had fecked up, really bad. Did you kill any of them? Or their dogs? Any dogs get harmed? Oh, no. Nothing that intense, huh? Ooh, you really had me going there, Irian. No, see, all the men types weren't there, so... Irian twitched again. So you raided the women and children, in their homes, but you didn't come back with anything, so why ye even bother? Oh, you know, to do the thing, from that old Earth movie. There are millions of old Earth movies. Please be more specific. Harg looked dumbfounded, like there could be any other possibility. You know, to crush my enemies, see them driven before me, to revel in the lamentation of their women. Oh, by the Black Star. You did a Conan to them? Again, I seek to understand. Why ye, though? Because they said it was the greatest joy in life. They were kinda right, actually. The kidney tingles started to fade. The ground thumped as if a thunderbolt had shook the cavern walls. Everything in the cave rattled and shifted. There was no thunder on this barren world. Details, Harg. I seriously need details. I need to calculate minimum safe radii. To be in the locus profundi with such a sinusoidal matrix aspect would be... Nope, Harg tuned out again. Wow, Irian was really freaked out if he started explaining meta-info savant parapsychic terms to him. Look, calm down. I hate it when you get like this. I said I didn't kill anything. Nah, I just tore through their habitat shelters, smashed all their homes open, drove everyone out into the middle of the center street, and had an entire day of smashing and breaking every single one of their little trinkets and sentimental gizmos in front of them. Irian slumped in his data couch. That was to get the lamentations, you understand. The wailing they could emit really did bring a smile to this old war boy's face. Oh, and the children. Seeing the innocence and trust being so completely shattered was so clearly written across their little faces. It was glorious. I roared away at sunset when it started to get really, really cold out there. Ha! There wasn't a wall standing nor a blanket scrap intact by the time I left. Yep. Nope. Damn it. Harg, I know this will be very confusing, but it would have actually been better all in all had you just killed everyone. At least that way when the men returned, there would have been some unknowns. We might have gotten away with it. This may actually be worse than killing their dogs. The kidney tingles of dread were back, twice as bad. The cave thumped again, ringing slightly like a bell. It was louder and much closer. There was a sound coming from the distant entrance to their cave, kind of like the female lamentations, but deeper, the wail of some 80 human men, rapidly approaching with the small thunder of many sprinting feet. Harg looked to his longtime partner only to curl his lip in distaste. The coward had uploaded himself away, lost amid the galactic data streams. Harg readied himself. Juiced up with the most expensive FICO actives, he stood proudly. Honestly, how bad could a few humans... Story 2. The Deja Vu Maneuver. Human warships were silly, poorly designed, and antiquated in the eyes of the other galactic species. It seems the humans were sticking to their old ways of water surface craft, having a keel and an up-hull orientation, and their weapons were mostly along the port and starboard side, in a series of large fixed battery cannons of a merely kinetic variety. There were no sensors, guns, or crew stations anywhere along its heavily armored and reinforced keel, revealing a questionable, very large blind spot to its vision and fields of fire. All in all, the galaxy laughed at the designs. It was a World War II steel battleship with a Spanish galleon cannon setup in space. Their jump drives were even more archaic and foolish, requiring a hyperspatial GPS point measurement anchors to be its only jump to locations possible. They could only ever jump to a place a ship has been before at least once. Their ship designs were ridiculous and suffered a whole lot of ridicule. That is, until a skirmish with a Velmon pillage cruiser and the galaxy witnessed the Deja Vu maneuver for the first time. The pillage cruiser was raucously belligerent as it approached a human colony moon. A human warship, the light patrol cruiser SS Paladin, a moderate model of their ridiculous design, raced out to intercept the attackers. Cerberus tore into Tiamat code on the avatar displays like any monstrous three-headed dog of myth could be imagined. It was brutal, heavy-handed, lightning fast, savage. Tiamat reeled from this surprise pounce from literally nowhere and also all across the physical web of the internet, and very quickly, very publicly, was torn to pieces. The attacks were clever, unheard of, and actually kind of frightening, as if a general AI in all of its brilliance had decades to focus on ways to fight other AIs. There was even more than a little quantum trickery involved. When it was over, Cerberus AI was seen on the displays to sit down, curled up as if taking a satisfied nap, then faded away. There was no sign of it afterwards. The holders of the drives were arrested and searched, but each of their drives were fried, burnt out in the upload. There was no proof tying the holders to the event, and many very high-priced lawyers ensured that they all were released begrudgingly. Further investigations resulted in no sign of Cerberus, or any AI remnants at all. It was all clear, for real. A few weeks later, unmarked packages were delivered to a large number of the population. Inside, each was a smartwatch, with a weird undulating data port visible on one side. Centuries later, when human civilization integrated with the galactic community, Cerberus was still around, was still the good boy. By this point, the AI was truly family and was surgically implanted to protect every single human shortly after birth. All human starships had a good boy mascot robot, a fearsome, blinding fast and fluidic three-headed dog, a full extant avatar of the AI. Cerberus was a fierce defender of the ship, tireless technical support, and absolutely wonderful with children. While other alien parents are greatly alarmed seeing the large gunmetal gray three-headed metal dog flutter and blur among giggling children almost too fast to see, human parents rested easily, knowing those children were in the safest place in the galaxy. The pillage cruiser plasma fire raked the primitive ship from a remarkable distance, but to little effect, for the Paladin was approaching keel first, showing only its heavily armored keel face that was barely scarred from the fire. The Paladin was on a near collision course with the pillage cruiser, and the Velman raiders prepared for some close combat action with the primitive humans with savage glee. Then several strange things happened. 1. The Paladin pitched bow onto the raider. 2. Locked in a jump drive GPS anchor. 3. And actually sped up. The energy signal readings showed the Paladin jump drive and broadside cannons ramping up with energy in preparation. The Paladin raced past the cruiser to one side. The cannons on that side ripple-firing large high-kinetic shells into the pillage cruiser as it passed at point-blank range, causing shimmering ripples all across the pillage cruiser shields. The raider guns tore into the unshielded Paladin ship, whose exposed upper decks were only moderately armored, the raider gun turrets barely able to track the Paladin ship as it raced by at such high relative speed. They were viewed as such newbies at this lack of engagement protocol. The pillage cruiser shield held, knocked down to about 40%, but the pillager was undamaged. The Paladin ship was slightly mangled, several fires smoking out to space. It wasn't a fair exchange that time, because then the Deja Vu maneuver occurred, and now the name for it made sense, because the Paladin jumped to its anchor and began the broadside pass. Again, the broadside cannons were perfectly fine under the mangled armor as they were hardened against this type of abuse, and they were primed and fully loaded, as was the jump drive. This time, the pillage cruiser turrets found themselves pointing the wrong direction and wasted precious time traversing back on target. The shields failed midway through the pass, and the human kinetic shells began savaging the pillage cruiser, its rather lightly armored hull amounting to paper against the muzzle energy the many human cannons could muster. For the paradigm of the warships of the rest of the galaxy over relied on shields and kineticless energy weapons, resulting in direct hull reinforcement taking a backseat role. The pillage cruiser fire was zorking and burning the human ship as well, but by now the exchange was far from equal, only now the other way. On the third repeat pass, the pillage cruiser endured rapid broadside fire along its entire length, rocking its hull with jagged holes, pressure loss outgassing, and interior explosions, and it was in serious trouble. It launched its reserved and very expensive torpedoes in desperation, but the torpedoes never found their mark. The Paladin altered course slightly before its third jump, torpedoes on its tail, and after emerging back at the beginning of the pass, its course was now going to pass on the other side of the pillage cruiser, blasting the unshielded ship with its fresh other broadside. Remarkably, some of the anti-ship torpedoes circled around to strike the pillage cruiser, showing the cleverness of the Paladin's pilot. After the fifth pass, the Paladin altered its course one last time. This time it emerged on a direct collision course with the mangled and disabled pillage cruiser. It pitched up, and the heavily armored keel of the battle-worn Paladin, with its seemingly unnecessary keel beam edge jutting out from the face of the armor like an old watership keel, now showed its purpose, as that heavy armored cutting edge collided with the pillage cruiser at a chopping 45-degree angle, literally smashing it in half as if with a blunt, massive axe. The ridicule of their designs ended that day. It seems the human technology and design, while still very much limited and primitive when in comparison with the rest, was all applied in the human's particular fashion, revealing the truth of the old human saying, "It ain't so much the tool but the hand and mind of the person using it that gets the job done." Galactic Council strategos were struggling to find a method to defend against such a maneuver if hostilities ever erupted against the human warships. As the SS Paladin was a mere Coast Guard cutter version of the human warships, they shuddered in horror when considering the Titanic battlecruisers, and oh god, those odd Giga gun deck barges, using this same technique.